What's up, guys? Welcome back to Military Insider. I did not see this one coming. The Secretary of War meaning because we don't have a Department of Defense no more. Now they call it Department of War. So the Secretary of War, Mr. Anthony Tata, is considering a recruiting campaign centered on Charlie Kirk. Yes, you heard that right. This guy's considering building up a recruiting campaign based and centered on Charlie Kirk. So let me show you who this guy is. So this is Mr. Anthony Tata. He's a retired brigadier general, one star. He's serving now as the Under Secretary of War, right below Pete Hegseth. So he came up with the brilliant idea to start a campaign or building up a campaign based on Charlie Kirk assassination. Let's take a look at this. Let's hear this. This is coming from NBC News as of September 18th. This was over the weekend. Let's hear this.
New exclusive reporting this hour on a planned push by top military leaders to try and recruit new troops after the death of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Two officials familiar with the planning tell NBC News there are plans for a campaign to encourage young people to join the U.S. military to honor Charlie Kirk's legacy.
Is this serious? I mean, are we talking real now? This is a complete joke. This guy was assassinated in cold-blooded in front of hundreds of people at a university in Utah on September 10th, and this report came on September 18th, 8 days after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and they are already considering recruiting campaigns to bring the military up in recruiting numbers because they failed to meet their recruiting efforts. So pretty much they want to use Charlie Kirk's death to boost up military recruiting numbers. I'm gonna read this with you guys, and I want you to let me know in the comments what you guys think about this while I read this. Make sure you hit that like and hit that subscribe. It really helped the channel out, and I really appreciate your support. Let's continue on with this. So Pentagon military leaders are considering a new recruiting campaign that would encourage young people to honor the legacy of assassinated conservative activist Charlie Kirk by joining the military, according to two officials familiar with the planning. So pretty much they want to use a historic event that took the life of Charlie Kirk to mix it up with military recruiting efforts. Okay, I'm going to show you guys something in a minute, and I want you guys to let me know what you think. So let's continue on. The idea would be to frame the recruiting campaign as a national call to service. Oh my God, this has to be a joke. The official said possible slogans that Pentagon leaders all have discussed include Charlie has awakened a generation of warriors. According to the official, oh my God, you have to be kidding me. These people already have slogans for the campaign. Hey, don't get me wrong. I just retired from the United States Army this past month, and I'm a full supporter of the military. And I believe that we need a strong military in order to defend our nation. But I don't think this is the way to do it. I haven't heard anything about Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense of War. I'm sorry, but we'll see. Let's continue on. So Anthony Tata, who served as Under Secretary of Defense, which is this guy right here, Anthony Tata, who served as Under Secretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness, is leading the effort, the official said. As part of the potential new campaign, Pentagon leaders are considering using chapters of Kirk's political organization, Turning Point USA, at schools across the U.S. as military recruitment centers, the official said. I'm going to read this again to you guys, and then I'm going to show you something. Let's read it again. As part of the potential new campaign, Pentagon leaders are considering using chapters of Kirk political organization, Turning Point USA, at school across the U.S. as military recruitment centers, the official said. Okay, So they're saying that they want to use Charlie Kirk political organization Turning Point USA at schools and colleges across the United States as military recruitment center. So pretty much what they're saying is they want to use a non-profit political organization to use it for their recruiting efforts. So they're mixing up a political organization with the military. So I went ahead and looked at some of the DoD manuals from the Department of Defense. Well, they have to change the name now because they're not the Department of Defense anymore. But this is the Department of Defense Directive, DoD 1344.10. Let's read the question here. This is pretty much like the questions and answer, FAQs. So what rules and regulations govern political activities by members of the armed forces? Department of Defense Directive, DoD 1344.10 lays out the rules and policy concerning political activity by member of the armed forces. Okay, that's fine. All right, let's continue. Let's continue reading this. Let me show you something here real quick that I found very, very interesting. Look at this. Defining term. What are partisan political groups? This one right here. Question 5. Partisan political groups are committees, clubs, and other organizations affiliated with a political party or candidate for partisan political office. The term also includes committees and clubs organized for a partisan political purpose or engaged in partisan political activity. Additionally, organizations created to influence the selection, nomination, election, and appointment of candidate to federal, state, or local public office are considered partisan political groups. So pretty much, the Department of War, they cannot mix political activities with the service members, right? If I read that right. So let me read this one again. What is DoD policy regarding participation in political activity by members of the armed forces? It is DoD policy to encourage members of the armed forces to carry out the obligations of citizenship such as voting. However, active duty members are specifically prohibited from engaging in partisan political activity. However, let me read that again. However, active duty members are specifically prohibited from engaging in partisan political activities, and all members of the armed forces should always avoid action that could reasonably be perceived as implying DoD sponsorship, approval, or endorsement of partisan political activity. I don't want to get into too much political here, but everybody knows that Charlie Kirk was in favor, or he was endorsing the Republican Party. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to debate here if you're a Democrat or I'm a Republican. It doesn't even matter. I'm talking about here the facts. The facts of the matter is that the Pentagon, they are trying to consider a recruiting campaign centered on Charlie Kirk's death. So you're telling me that according to this manual, it's saying that no active duty members are specifically prohibited from engaging in partisan political activity, and all members of the armed forces should always avoid actions that could reasonably be perceived as implying DoD sponsorships. Okay, so you're telling me that these guys right here are trying to use Charlie Kirk legacy and strategy and movement to bump up the recruiting numbers. This is, for me, this is crazy. This is completely, I don't know, this is nonsense for me, because I mean, you on your manuals is prohibited to active duty members engage or to participate in any political activities with organization or committees, but then you got this guy Anthony Tata saying that they're considering a recruiting campaign centered on Charlie Kirk. Let's continue reading this because I found this very, very interesting. And they already have a slogan. Charlie has awakened a generation of warriors. Oh my goodness. Anyhow, let's keep reading this. As part of the potential new campaign, Pentagon leaders are considering using chapters of Kirk's political organization Turning Point USA at school across the U.S. as military recruitment centers, the official said. So pretty much you're going to use Turning Point USA campuses, all the campuses they went on, and they support Charlie Kirk vision and organization, Turning Point USA, and they're going to set up recruiters with tables and pamphlet to try to recruit people. Come on now. That could include inviting recruiters to be present at events. There you go. At events or advertising for the military at the chapters. One of them explained. President Donald Trump has credited Kirk and Turning Point USA with helping him win the 2024 election. We all know that. The officials did not know what the timing would be for rolling out the possible new recruitment campaign, and it's not clear if it will ultimately happen. The idea is facing resistance from some Pentagon leaders, of course, who have privately warned those working on the effort that such a campaign could be perceived as the military trying to capitalize on Kirk's death. Of course, at least we got some smart people at the Pentagon. The two officials said Kirk did not serve in the armed forces. He did not. He tried to go to West Point and he got denied. He never went to West Point. He never served. But let's continue on. Trump officials have sought to pay public homage to Kirk. The day after the assassination, Vice President J.D. Vance, who was close to Kirk, flew from Washington, D.C. to Utah to escort Kirk's wife and his remains back to Arizona. We all know that, they were very, very good friends, and, it's the right thing to do. So those efforts have also extended to attempts to punish those who speak ill of Kirk or his assassination. Hexet, the Secretary of War, last week told staff to actively search for any members of the military or others who work with the Defense Department who mocked or condoned Kirk's death so that they could be punished. I'm pretty sure you guys know, I think he was a captain, Marine captain, got relief for some comments or a video he posted on TikTok on Charlie Kirk's assassination. Let's continue on. This is what I want you to show you. Recruiting worries, okay? The potential push comes as the Pentagon Military Service Recruitment Task Force, which Tata co-chairs, is warning of a possible drop in future recruits, according to two defense officials. Okay, now I want to show you guys this. I'm gonna talk Army because the Army is the biggest force right now. So you can see the big picture here. So the Army is losing nearly 1/4 of soldiers in the first 2 years of enlistment. Okay, so pretty much they are losing 1/4 of the total force of the first 2 years of enlistment. So pretty much they're meeting the recruiting numbers, but they're not meeting the retention standard. But this report came on, let me see, on March 7th this year. And then you go to the army.mil. Look at this. Army exceeds retention targets early. Continues re-enlistments. All right, so let's go back to military.com. The Army is grappling with a staggering attrition rate among newly enlisted troops. Pretty much they are staggering with keep them on the Army, pretty much. Even as recent recruiting figures suggest the service is clawing its way out of years-long enlistment crisis. Nearly 1/4 of soldiers recruited in 2022 have failed to complete their initial contracts, according to internal Army data reviewed by military.com. While the Army's recruiting totals look solid on paper, that's what I was telling you. The recruiting numbers look fine, but the retention numbers are way down. A high dropout rate raises serious doubts about whether those numbers are an accurate portrayal of how well the service is manned. These are big words here. They're pretty much they're putting in doubt how the Army has been manned. So it remains unclear why the Army is losing so many soldiers, but one explanation could be the declining quality of its recruiting pool. 1/4 of all enlistees last year had to go through at least one of the future soldier prep courses, which were set up as a sort of a silver bullet for recruiting, getting applicants up to snuff with academic or body fat enlistment standard before they ship out to basic training. So pretty much the Army was not doing their recruiting efforts numbers they were super weighed down, and they come up with this brilliant idea of the future soldier prep courses. Pretty much the recruits that couldn't pass, the future applicant or the future soldier that couldn't pass the ASVAB, or they were overweight. But look at this. The military recruiting challenges have largely centered around finding young Americans eligible to serve, a pool that the Pentagon has estimated at only 23% of 17 to 24-year-olds. Pretty much that's the market that all the Army recruiters look at, the 17 to 24-year. That's the biggest market. One senior Army official with direct knowledge of the service recruiting effort said only about 8% are eligible for a so-called clean enlistment, meaning the recruit didn't need any waivers or have to attend a prep course. So I want to show you this. So the Army was not completing their recruiting number or meeting their expectations, but this is something that caught my attention. Look at this. When I read this is crazy. Look at this. The Army has also loosened The Army has also loosened restriction on criminal backgrounds. Oh my God, come on, man. Last year, the service granted 1,045 waivers for misdemeanor offenses. Oh my God. Up from 895 in 2022. More strikingly, it approved 401 felony waivers, quadrupling the 98 granted in 2022. The Army prohibit waivers for crimes related to sexual violence. Okay. The Army prohibit waivers for crimes related for sexual violence. I'm assuming because they very strong and have zero tolerance with the SHARP program, which is the Sexual Harassment Assault Response Program prevention. That's why probably they are prohibiting those waivers. But they are approving waiver for misdemeanors and felonies. And they also come up with this program, the Future Soldier Prep Course, allowing people to join or put them in the program if they're overweight or they cannot pass the ASVAB. So what are we recruiting? I mean, clearly the Marine Corps doesn't have this issue, right? And then you have this guy coming up saying that they want to use Charlie Kirk's death to campaign for recruiting efforts. This is, I don't know, guys, but for me, this is completely nonsense. And I cannot believe this when I read it yesterday. I think, I don't know what to tell you guys. I mean, I just retired this past month, and I'm very grateful about the service I did for the Army. And I'm always a true believer that we need a solid military to defend our great nation, but this is something that needs to get looked at. Campaigning basing on Charlie Kirk's death after 8 days of his assassination, not even campaigning yet, because this have to go through a bunch of different channels, but at least sparking that idea that you can campaign centered on this guy's death. Come on, man. Have a little bit of sensitivity or something, or empathy with the family. Do you really think you're gonna bump your numbers up because Charlie Kirk was assassinated? I don't know, guys. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Make sure you hit that like, that subscribe button. It really helps the channel out, and I really thank you, and I'm very, very grateful to have you guys and for the support you have given me. And I'll see you guys on the next one.